Greetings, everyone, and thanks for viewing my particular archive project. It's entitled Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois and the Niagara Movement. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois was a Harvard scholar, a writer, and the co-founder of the Niagara Movement, the NAACP, and the Pan-African Congresses. He was also an international spokesperson for peace and for the rights of the oppressed. My archival project, as I stipulated earlier, was about Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, but more specifically, it was about the what led to the formation of the Niagara movement in 1905. And as you can see on the right-hand side, there were 29 other individuals with Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois depicted here in the middle um, during the formation of that particular um, movement or organization. Several things that prompted me to focus on this project was basically to learn more about Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. Also, I wanted a historically accurate account of what led to the formation of the organization, since it was the predecessor to the NAACP. And um, because I've met several of its national officers during my youth. I met the Reverend Dr. Benjamin Hooks and National Executive Secretary Mrs. Maxine Smith um, while I was, I guess, a youth member of the organization. And we can find the Constitution and bylaws of the Niagara movement on the right-hand side. What archival sources did I use? I primarily focused on the UMass Amherst Credo collection. On the right-hand side, it can be found at this URL, but on the right-hand side, you can see that this is about W.E.B. Du Bois's papers. Um, and I think there's almost 100,000 items in that collection. And, this particular search tool was very helpful in my search for information. Um, so how did I find it? I found about the site primarily through a Google search. Initially, I searched through the collections that we have of his articles, where they were pictures, essays, writings, and so forth, speeches, and they were in the online, just clicking on the online button. But ultimately, like I said earlier, I started using the search function, and it saved me a lot of time. Some of the things that I learned about the archival research process, well, that it's important to distinguish your source materials. And secondly, make sure you give proper citation for those items. But more than that, make sure you understand your research goal and be thorough and diligent in your effort. So what did I learn about the topic under study? Um, First of all, I learned primarily that the Niagara movement was formed in response to Booker T. Washington being ordained, in essence, as the Negro national spokesperson by white America. His ideology for the progress of Negro Americans clashed very strongly or severely with the ideology proposed by Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois and his associates. Um, Below here we can see an article that was published from one of Booker T. Washington's speeches called "The Negro Problem from the Negro Point of View." And on the right-hand side, you can see some of the Declaration of Principles for the Niagara Movement. Additionally, I learned that the seeds for this particular clash were planted and took root shortly after President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated and Vice President Andrew Johnson took control of the Oval Office. Um, and that the Ku Klux Klan rose to prominence in America shortly after or shortly or around this particular period of time. As we can see, this is a chronology of the Reconstruction period, and if you go down the list, you'll find that President Andrew Johnson vetoed, several of the Civil Rights Act, the Freedmen Bureau's bill, stuff like that. He vetoed those things. Congress overrode them, but he did try to shut them down. He ultimately gutted the Freedmen's Bureau financially. But we also see that some of the states during the Reconstruction period had already started what was called the Black Code, or developing legislation designed to denigrate African Americans. And finally, I learned that the KKK had become so prominent in society by the early 1870s that Congress ordered an investigation that is depicted in this excerpt from an article in an NAACP magazine on the right here about the report request from the 1871. But most of all, um, and some of the atrocities that the KKK was committing in South Carolina alone at that time. During a 6-month period of time, they killed a lot of people and, whipped and lynched and hung a lot of folks as well. But most importantly, I learned that Booker T. Washington's approach to the quote unquote Negro problem was basically focused on a dream for education and economic progress. It was politically and socially conciliatory. It was basically what white Southerners wanted. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois and the Niagara Movement, on the other hand, they proposed a more holistic approach. They essentially desired what President Abraham Lincoln sought for them: the right to vote, political representation, education, and social autonomy. And these are my references. They were 15 in all. And thank you so very much for watching my presentation.